A lot of work.
Good.
They couldn't use vote builder on a digital thing. They had to do it printout. So that's going to be our secret weapon next year. There's 85 senior senators around Bucks County.
Yeah.
Linda Mintz and I from Benson. We're going to target that. We're going to focus on that. Yeah, she's awesome.
I'm actually going to switch it up a little bit. So, Brian, I'm going to have you go right after Dr. Doster, and then I'm going to have Damon go after you, and then to Tim. All right?
Okay, so I'm gonna go not to
all right.
Tim Brennan.
Yep. Okay.
Wait, I'm gonna go back up.
You're going to go where
after I'm
Damon
done.
is. Yeah, you're going to go 120. So,
Gotcha.
okay, I'll call you when it's time. All right. So, good afternoon, everyone. We are here because today is day 116. 116 days since June 30th. 116 days in which Senate Republicans have failed the people of Pennsylvania. Now, let me tell you exactly what's happened over the course of this year, starting back in February, so you understand how it is that we got to where we are today. Back in February, as usually is the case, the governor came before the General Assembly, both the House and the Senate, to give his annual budget address. And when he did that, he laid out a budget that would spend approximately $51.5 billion. What were the priorities that the governor was focusing on? Well, one of the reasons we're at a school here today is because public education was first and foremost on his list. Beyond that, he focused on infrastructure improvements, on funding our critical mental health needs and health needs across the state generally. The governor set out a plan that would keep Pennsylvania moving forward. Now, typically what happens when the governor makes his address is the legislature then begins to review what the governor has done. We have hearings on our appropriations committees, and Representative Brennan, who's with us today, is on the House Appropriations Committee. And after that process is over, sometime usually early spring, then the legislature and the governor start to negotiate a final budget, all with the aim of getting a budget passed on or about the 30th of June, which is the end of the state's fiscal year, 116 days ago. But what happened this time? It didn't quite go according to plan. House Democrats came back with a proposal to try to get the Senate Republicans to the negotiating table. They actually came down $1 billion off what the governor had proposed. They came down to about $50.5 billion. That's $1 billion less. And what did the Senate Republicans do? Nothing. June 30th came and went. July, early July, soon became late July. There were some discussions. And at one point, Joe Pittman, the Senate Majority Leader on the Republican side, actually said publicly that he can get on board for a $49 billion budget. And I want you to remember that because that's important. A couple of weeks later, in mid-August, the Senate Republicans, now feeling some pressure from the folks back home who realized that a budget hadn't been passed and they had not made any real proposal other than those comments by Senator Pittman, passed a $47.6 billion budget, which is exactly the amount for our previous fiscal year. So that was a flat funding budget. But not really when you consider Trumpflation, right? Inflation has been on the rise. In fact, the most recent indicators today indicate that inflation is once again ticking up. So a flat funding budget actually costs our schools and all of our social services money. It's actually a cut. It's actually a cut. So what did the House Democrats and the governor come back with? Just about a few weeks ago, the House passed another budget bill, once again coming down, this time a little over $50 billion. What was the Republican response this past week? Once again, a flat funded budget at $47.9 billion. They added a little bit for debt service, and that was it. Now, the problem with that is this. Two big problems with what they proposed. Aside from the fact that we're now 116 days into this impasse, and they're still basically where they were at the beginning of it, there are two big expenses that the state has to pay for that will cost more than what we paid for last year. One of them is to comply with the court's order with respect to the funding of public education. You may recall that the courts have ruled that under our state constitution, we have to adequately fund public education. And to meet the requirements of what the court set out, at a minimum, the state has to add an additional $500 million in this year's budget. So right off the bat, the Republican position of flat funding fails the test. But we're not going to stop there. Because under the rules that the federal government has for medical assistance and other health care requirements, the state of Pennsylvania has to spend another $1.7 billion on health care. $1.7 billion. Now add those two together. I think you guys are pretty good at math, right? That's $2.2 billion. How can we possibly pass a flat funding budget and meet those obligations without making dramatic cuts in existing lines and existing funding in the state? The answer is we can't. So what is the Republican response? Well, we just can't afford anything more. We're sorry, we can't afford anything more, and we're being fiscally responsible. Look, I'm all about fiscal responsibility, right? We have to be fair to the taxpayer. But keep in mind, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is sitting on about $10 billion in surplus right now between our rainy day fund and surplus revenues. $10 billion. So to come up with an extra $2 billion or so to fund what we must under law is not too much to ask. Does not put us in financial jeopardy and does not require taxpayers to pay any more, which is a really important point that we should also underscore, because that's something else that the other side is not being truthful about. So we're here today to say that the Senate Republicans have to come to the table. They have to negotiate in good faith, and they have to be realistic about the situation we are in. This is day 116. It is already starting to hurt our school districts. It's already starting to hurt the recipients of funding from the state from various social programs. It's only going to get worse from here on out. There's no excuse. We demand a negotiation. We demand a budget. 116 days is far too long. There is no excuse left. It's time to get to work. So I am very pleased to be joined here today by obviously so many citizens who care so much about this issue. I'm grateful for their support, as well as my colleagues in the State House. We have some local officials with the Morrisville School District that we're going to hear from. And of course, our two county commissioners, Bob Harvey and Diane Ellis-Marseglia, who are going to talk a little bit about how this is impacting at the county level. But first, let me turn it over to my friend and colleague who, like me, represents where we are right now, Morrisville, Representative Jim Prokopiak. Jim?
Thank you, Senator. Before I was elected to the State House, I was a school board member. And one of the things we have to do as a school board member is we have to pass a budget. And as we're going through the budget negotiations and looking at everything that we have to take into, we estimate what we're going to get from the state. And this is done all over the state, all across the 500 school districts. And they sit there and they say, okay, we expect an increase of this amount. And that's how they look and build a budget. And that's how they determine how much money they're going to have to go to the taxpayers and ask for to fund those schools. Because make no mistake, we have a constitutional duty in this state to fund public education. It's not just me not saying that. It's in the Pennsylvania Constitution, and it's something that, frankly, the Senate Republicans need to read again. The simple fact is there was a court order that said that they had not been doing their job for decades. And now we're hearing from their leadership, that's not really what it means. Well, you know, I think that judge, who's a Republican judge, by the way, would disagree. The simple fact is we have a duty to fund education in the state, and we're not doing it. And what they're doing by passing a flat-funded budget with $0 in increase in education means that every single taxpayer in the state at the local level is going to pay more. Neshaminy budgeted more for state funding this year than last year. Pennsbury did the same. So did Morrisville. School districts all across the state budgeted and relied on more money from the state. And the Senate Republicans are reneging on that promise. The simple fact is, it's our duty to make sure that the people understand that if the state does not come through on their constitutional duty, that their local property taxes are going to go up and services will be cut. Because, interestingly enough, the Senate didn't pass that budget before every school district was required to do their budget. They waited till months after to pass that flat-funded budget. And now local taxpayers are going to have to foot the bill. That's unacceptable. I represent seniors who come in every single day and say, what can you do to help me on my property taxes? I'm having a hard time staying in my home. And the answer from the Senate Republicans is absolutely nothing. We expect you to pay more. It's unacceptable. We need the Senate leadership to understand that, you know what? Our money from here in the Southeast goes to fund many school districts in rural areas in their districts, in Senator Ward's district, in Senator Pittman's district. Some of those districts get over 70% of their money from the state. That's not their money that's going there. That's our money that's going there. It's high time that we sit there and start calling them on the crap that they're pulling, frankly. Simple fact is, we have a duty. We're not doing our duty. And it's affecting people here in Morrisville. It's affecting people in Pennsbury and Bucks County, all across this state. It's unacceptable. And until we get to actually doing our job, you know, I've only been, about 20 months I've been in this office. And I said, this is the most frustrating period in sitting there and hearing excuse after excuse after excuse from Senate Republicans. They talk about, oh, well, we need more revenue sources. But every time we talk about revenue sources, none of which raise property taxes, none of which raise taxes, income taxes, any of those things. We talk about closing the Delaware loophole. We talk about skill games. We talk about legalizing marijuana. They don't take any of them up. They just sit there and say, oh, we're poor, we don't have the money. We have $10 billion in the bank, but we don't have any money. It's time for them to get real. It's time for them to do what they need to do. Till then, we're going to be stuck in the same agenda. And it's not just education, although education is important and dear to my heart as a former school board member, but it's also mental health funding, which has been flat funded for years, frankly, ever since Corbett cut money from the mental health funding. It's about our social programs. It's about making sure that, you know what, Pennsylvanians have the ability to live their American dream. And frankly, the Senate Republicans are getting in the way of that. So I'm going to turn it now over to the superintendent of Morrisville School District, Dr. Andrew Doster, and he can talk more about the impact on Morrisville that the continued failure of the Republicans to pass a budget has had here. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for everyone for coming out today. I appreciate the efforts by the Senator's office and our legislators for holding this press conference today and giving us a chance to advocate here for the passing of the state budget. So those are two tough acts to follow. A lot of passion, and I appreciate that, but I will certainly do my best here. I'm very fortunate that I get to be the superintendent of schools here at Morrisville for a great community and a great group of students and a really dedicated group of professionals and support staff that allow this district to function day in and day out. Behind me, between this building and our building a block down the road, we have about 1,000 students, and I can tell you that since August, there have been changes, slow changes that have had to be made that impact our students on a day-to-day basis. So since the subsidies stopped coming in, or actually never started, we have had to make some very difficult decisions. As a small district in Pennsylvania, our pockets are not as deep as some of our larger, wealthier districts, and we are certainly feeling this a lot sooner than other districts in the county and across the Commonwealth. And it is impacting decisions that we make day to day, from even the smallest of things like our classroom supplies for our students, to opportunities they have to participate in trips, to us supporting and buying programming for them, all of which we are trying to make do and funnel and channel our funds that we have in our district right now to ensure that those opportunities can continue. I will stand here before you today and say that there have been some difficult decisions to cut some of those things and some of those opportunities from our students to this point in the year. And that to me is unacceptable. I was asked a question not too long ago about what I believe the purpose of education is in my position, and my response was to provide a better opportunity and a better possible future for the students that are in school right now than we as adults have. And when situations like this occur, where the budget's not passed, opportunities are being pulled from our students on a daily basis. So I never imagined that the biggest hurdle I would have in education to providing a better opportunity for our students would be the adults, rather than trying to shift mindsets and paradigms of students. So it's very frustrating. I can tell you that our district, without getting into specifics, our district cannot sustain this over a significant amount of time. The lack of funding that we have, the revenue stream that we count on and rely on from the state, we are going to hit a point of critical mass here in the months coming. So the opportunities that will then continue to be pulled away from our kids between now and a point of critical mass is going to be felt by everybody. And I walk through the halls here, and I walk through the halls at our Grandview Elementary School, and I think about the things as I'm talking with students and I'm looking at our faculty and our staff. I'm also thinking about those things that I've had to say no to, and the things that are not being provided or presented to them at this time that they really have a right to. You know, our job is to care for and educate other people's children, and the fact that we're not able to do that at a level that we really have a moral and a professional obligation to do so is very disappointing. And we're trying to provide the same opportunities with less money, and it hits a point where that's just no longer possible. So, you know, again, while other districts may be able to sustain this without a budget for, you know, several months or even throughout the entire school year, I can tell you that we are not in a position where that's possible. So my plea goes out to everybody to really come back to the table, to prioritize what has to happen for public education, and to really give consideration to the very realistic possibilities that exist should the budget not be settled. So again, I want to thank everyone for coming out. I'd like to thank our legislators for coming here today, and members of the public and our school board, because this is a point of crisis for this specific school district right now. And I've been on the phone, and I am very appreciative as the legislators have been very gracious with their time and speaking with me. Yesterday, I had a meeting with 3 officials from the Department of Education in Harrisburg. The governor's office took a phone call from me on Monday this past week, and I've also been working with the Bucks County Intermediate Unit and that executive team, as well as anyone that is willing to listen. So I just want to let everyone know how appreciative I am of the efforts, of the feedback and the information that's being provided to me that I probably otherwise would not have had or had the opportunity to hear firsthand. So, I appreciate everyone's efforts, but this is something that is not sustainable much longer for small districts across the state, but more specifically for the school district of Borough of Morrisville. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Doster. I'm now going to introduce my friend and colleague in the State House, Representative Brian Monroe. Brian?
Appreciate it. Good afternoon, everybody. Right actually before I started my drive down here to Morrisville, I actually was speaking to a class at Central Bucks South just about the position of state representative and what we do in the House, just generally how you get involved. And one of the last questions I was asked before we wrapped up was, what was my favorite part of being a state representative? And I had to quickly think for a brief second, but it really boils down to what we do out of our district offices. Constituent services. Every day, we all have staffs. Staff members that help our constituents on a daily basis. And these are people that come to us who either are having difficulty staying in their home because they can't afford their rent. They might have, like one instance, there was a senior citizen who had a disability, minimal income, and in the midst of January during a very cold winter, her HVAC went out. So she was really facing a situation where she was in a house that was 30 degrees. You name it, our staff deal with serious issues on a daily basis. And these are people that come in here already on the verge of tears. But let me tell you, those tears are flowing. And why I want to really thank Senator Sanacero for calling this today is because the uptick of what I am hearing directly back from my staff about our constituents that are coming in with those issues, and we are literally turning to them and saying that the nonprofits that we would typically go to, because look, we're a pass-through, like we can't necessarily help you directly, but we know the people that can help you, and it's those nonprofits are literally closing their doors now. We just received an email today from a bunch of nonprofits right here in Bucks County that are screaming into the sky saying that the pain is real. And what I am here to say, and what I really wanted to focus on, is that pain that I am literally hearing back directly from our constituents. This is not the reason why any of us got into this position. We got into this position to help. And the Senate Republicans' failure to engage in a negotiation process. Look, I am not part of the negotiation process. Like a lot of my colleagues here, I'm in my 3rd year as a state representative. So I'm not in the negotiation room, but I can tell you that when you're in a room and you're negotiating and you're the only person in there, you are negotiating against yourself. And that is what we have done as a Democratic majority in the State House. We've been negotiating basically with ourselves. We put out multiple budgets and we've brought down those budgets, and they literally, the Senate Republicans have brought forth a budget billions of dollars below where we were. That's not a reasonable negotiation. So I hope they listen to their own constituents, because I know that those Senate Republicans have constituents coming in and they're speaking to their staff. I hope their staff is talking to those senators, telling them the real pain that they're feeling. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. You want to turn it over? Okay. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you very much, Brian. Next, I'd like to introduce the president of the Morrisville School District School Board, Damon Miller. Damon?
Good afternoon. I wrote everything down so that I can kind of hopefully stay on point. Our founding fathers chose Pennsylvania to be a commonwealth to show that the state's government was established for the, quote, common good of the people. Well, there is no common good happening right now in our state due to the current status of the budget, especially within education. If you have followed the Borough of Morrisville School District, you will know that we are no stranger to struggling financially. And like a family facing day-to-day hardships trying to make ends meet, to only suffer more with the shortfall of income due to a layoff, our school district family has had to find ways to make ends meet due to this budget impasse. We are not a district with a luxury to trim staff and fill the gaps with the remaining workers. Our administration and staff already wear 2 or 3 hats every day. Our faculty and assistants teach students at capacity to ensure that they are being taught throughout the day. And as Dr. Doster mentioned before, our students, those are the ones who are suffering the most with less supplies for the classroom and extracurricular activities. Simple things that other larger and wealthier districts take for granted are harder to come by here at Morrisville, especially when the funding has stopped. Add on top of that crush of there is the cyber charter school tuition. Every one of the 500 districts in Pennsylvania pays a different cost per student. According to the Pennsylvania Department of Education's 2024-25 Special Education Expenditure per Average Daily Membership Report, Morrisville is listed as the 5th highest district in the state, paying over $50,000, and has been in the top 5 consistently since at least the 2016-17 reporting. When you factor expenditures for all charter schools, the 2024-25 reporting shows that Morrisville is the 2nd highest district in the state at over $67,000. And we're number 1 in Bucks County. Governor Shapiro asked for an $8,000 tuition cap. Imagine if 50 of our 67 students who are enrolled in a charter school were attending a cyber charter school and were not a special education student. That would be a cost of $400,000. The savings would be nearly $3 million. What this district could do with $3 million would not only benefit the students, but also this borough. When 2 students in the same grade, but from 2 different districts, attend the same cyber charter school and receive the same education, why is their tuition based on their zip code? How is this district expected to pay these mandated costs as well as provide for their in-district students when there is no fair formula across all the districts? School boards across the state are required to pass a budget by June 30th every year, and our legislators are supposed to do the same thing, only they seem to get a free pass that school districts don't. It's time for our state elected leaders to put their differences aside and bring their heads together to work out a budget for the, quote, common good. Thank you.
I just want to thank Damon for his continued leadership on this Board of Education. You've done a tremendous job, and it's evident that you care about the kids in the Morrisville School District and the people of Morrisville. So thank you for your service, Damon. Next, I'd like to introduce my friend and colleague, Representative Tim Brennan. Tim?
I want to thank you all for coming out here tonight. I want to thank all the folks standing here beside me, and I want to thank Senator Sanacero for pulling this together. Diane Marseglia, Bob Harvey, our other state representatives here, who are really standing up for all those people who feel voiceless right now, and are working to try and help the people that are affected by this budget crisis. I genuinely would not be a part of government if I didn't believe that it had the chance to make people's lives better, and I've seen that over and over and over again with the education that our kids receive that can solve all these complicated problems facing our future, with complicated public health issues that we're all going to face at some point in our lives, with helping to care for our seniors and with helping to care for our folks with disabilities. And really, frankly, that's built the infrastructure that made our suburbs here the amazing place that it is to live. And as a member of the Appropriations Committee, I have seen firsthand what we're dealing with, negotiating with the Senate. The Senate Republicans, I can say firsthand, I was there throughout July, and the Senate Republican leadership did not bring their members back when House Democrats were there, ready, willing, able to work for consensus. And many of our members questioned if we were really negotiating in good faith with Senate Republicans, and yet we offered concession after concession after concession, only to have the Republicans in the Senate send us exactly the same budget that we saw last year. And as you heard Senator Sanacero describe in detail, that is not acceptable. That is flat funding, and that is cuts. And at the same time, what's even more alarming is we've seen some of these rural Republican senators doing more on Facebook and TikTok and on the internet than they're doing in Harrisburg, going so far as the theatrics of taking a literal flamethrower to the governor's budget. Now, I think it's pretty obvious that is not serious leadership, and their product is not a serious budget. We need senators, including here in the suburbs, including here in Bucks County, to stand up for those in their leadership on the Republican side that want to set everything else on fire. We need functioning government, and we need functional senators here in Bucks County, like Frank Ferry, to stand up. We need the senators to know that they have a responsibility and that they have to work for consensus. And that's a lot more difficult when these so-called moderates are just walking hand in foot with their Republican leadership. So in the Senate's most recent budget, we've heard Republican leadership say that this budget deals with our needs, not our wants. But I frankly don't know who they're talking to, because we have seen them come forward with a budget that fails to constitutionally fund education, that fails to support our healthcare systems, our healthcare professionals, that fails to support our seniors, that fails to support those facing increasing housing costs here, particularly in the suburbs, that fails to help our businesses deal with the current environment that they find themselves in the 21st century. So this budget fails students, it fails parents, it fails seniors, it fails our business community. And we have to be working for consensus. And frankly, I haven't seen that from Senate Republicans. The House passed a bipartisan budget, but the Senate Republicans continue to apply political litmus tests, to only move forward bills that have a majority of their majority. And that's not consensus. That's not adult leadership. So I'm calling on our Republican senators representing us that call themselves moderate, particularly Frank Ferry, Tracy Pennycook, Joe Picozzi. Let's get off the soapbox. Let's work together. Let's do something for our constituents, not your leadership in Harrisburg. So thank you, and keep pushing to have this budget passed.
Thank you, Tim. Well said. Next, I would like to introduce our County Commissioner's Chair, Bob Harvey. Bob?
Thank you, Senator Sanacero. Thank you, all of you, for being here. I grew up about 8 miles down the road and went to a small school just like this, in Bristol High School. A school literally in a neighborhood just like this one. Working class kids teachers, school board members, staff who cared about their kids, who lived on the same streets as the kids, shopped in the same stores, knew the community. Those are the people being left behind by the failure of especially Senate Republicans to do their jobs. School's in session today. Kids in this building and in the elementary school down the street, they learn pretty quickly that if you don't work and do your job, you don't pass. You don't move on to the next grade. If you're an athlete, you don't play in the next game. You learn that lesson. Do your job. Do what's being asked of you. The teachers in here, the support staff, everybody who works, the coaches, the advisors in the clubs, the school board members, the superintendent, they're doing their jobs. They come here 180 days a year with the kids, plus the in-service days when the kids aren't here, to do their jobs because they care about this community, they care about the students who come here, and they care about making sure that the next generation is better off than this one. And they know that if they don't do their job, they're not going to have one. And yet we see 27 members of the state Senate not doing their jobs, added with the people in Washington, D.C., who continue to not do their jobs. And the people who are hurt are people in Morrisville, are the people in Bristol, are people who need services that the county provides, services to keep people safe, services to provide education and health care support and food support. I ran for this office as commissioner because I wanted to make my county better. It's the same reason I became a teacher and served for 26 years teaching in public schools, because I wanted to make my community better. I don't know why these 27 senators in Harrisburg ran for their offices. I know they're getting their paychecks, even though they're not doing their job. I know they're getting all their benefits as state employees, even though they're not doing their job. And I wonder how many people living in these homes who are working probably 2 and 3 jobs to make ends meet, I wonder how they would feel. I wonder how long they'd last at those jobs if they just decided, you know what, I'm not going to do my job. I'm not going to really come to work very much. I'm going to do less than the bare minimum. That's what I'm going to do. But keep paying me, keep giving me my benefits. It's really embarrassing, okay, and pathetic, quite frankly, that we have to be here basically asking people to do their jobs they ran for. Why, I don't know. But it's time for them to wake up. It's time for them to realize the pain they're causing to the people of this Commonwealth. And it's time for them to get to work and actually start doing their jobs. I'm honored to be here with Commissioner Marseglia, who's going to go into a little more detail about the impacts on county government.
Thank you. Thank you. County government, about 70% of it is social services, so we are directly feeling the effects of this. Most of the money we get for social services comes through the state. We are also on a calendar year, not a fiscal year, so we have been really struggling to provide to our providers. But I wanted to share first something that I hope people aren't forgetting, and that is that our providers are doing everything they can to meet the needs of the community right now. And one of the main things they're doing is they're not paying themselves. So you have people out there working and not getting paid just so other people will be able to go to those food banks, they'll be able to help children, and they'll be able to continue to see people who are struggling with mental health issues. As a couple examples I wanted to give, in Bucks County, 20% of the population is over age 60. And as the baby boomers age, we are finding more calls every day to the Area Agency on Aging for help. But we are not getting any money to pay the people who serve those seniors. It's gotten to the point now where we are just about to start a waiting list so that when someone calls for help, they're going to have to wait because there isn't any money left. We have gotten 63% of the money that we needed this year. So there is some hope that in terms of the services that are being delivered now, if we are really careful, we might be able to eke this out for another 6 or 7 weeks. If it goes on any longer than that, those are our seniors that we will be leaving unfunded. Bucks County also delivers behavioral health and mental health services, and that means that we get the money and we provide money to the providers who are helping people who are struggling. One of the most difficult things they're having right now without the Senate Republicans giving them a budget is they cannot plan for the future. We are supposed to open a huge crisis center next year, and we can't plan the funding because we don't have a state budget to base that upon. It's also impossible for us to know how the medical assistance cutbacks that are happening in the federal government are going to be supplemented by the state government, so we can't plan for that either. And we are also hearing from our providers that as awareness has grown about SNAP benefits being cut and now LIHEAP being cut, that they are getting more and more calls from families who are suffering emotional stress from that, and they can't fit them into their caseloads as it is. But what will they do when there is no money? We also get money from the state for our HAP, or Homeless Assistance Program, and this directly keeps people in their homes. It allows our agencies to provide funding to someone who is going to be kicked out of their house because they're a couple mortgage payments short. We can put that mortgage payment in for them. Or if they are not getting heat or they are not getting electric because they're trying to make the mortgage payment, we can step in and help. But that has been completely cut off, and as of this week, we aren't helping anybody with that. And finally, in terms of children and youth, like aging, probably the other most important people we help, $12 million has still not reached us from over the summer, from funding that funds over 300 families that are getting assistance. And this is with emotional problems, it's with financial problems, it's with physical problems. There's another $12 million that was due last week that hasn't come. So we are certain that we can only go so far on the money that the county has in the budget, and then we won't know how to deliver services to those families and children. We have also stopped working on the grants that we have been given for truancy and for outreach to people who need hoteling or bridge transitional housing, because there is nothing left in that funding. So I thank you for letting me share that. I hope that it gives a kind of a real sense of what we're dealing with and what the community around you is dealing with. And once again, I ask that you not only remember, Senate Republicans, the people who are struggling, but the people who are trying to help the people who are struggling. Thank you.
Diane, thank you very much for that and putting a real face on the urgency of getting this budget done. We have, in that vein, all of us, I believe, up here heard from a number of local organizations in the course of this impasse. We've heard from the Bucks County Opportunity Council, A Woman's Place, the Bucks County Housing Group, Family Services of Bucks County, the Pendale Mental Health, NOVA, and the Bucks County Center for Independent Living, just to name a few. I want to acknowledge that our friend and colleague Tina Davis was also with us here today. She had to go to another event, but we're grateful for her leadership in the Pennsylvania House as well. I mentioned at the outset of my comments that at one point during the impasse, Senator Pittman, the Republican Majority Leader, mentioned that he was willing to do a $49 billion budget. He can't be found now to respond to what his position is currently. This is something that we should be able to do today. It's frankly something we should have been able to do 116 days ago. But if you're being driven completely by ideology, it makes it hard to actually have a good faith negotiation. I think it was Representative Brennan who outlined, what the House Democrats have done in bidding against themselves. I outlined it at the beginning, right? Coming down from the original proposal of the governor and completely getting stonewalled in response. People are hurting across this state. Here in Bucks County, and what Diane just described in Bucks County, it's happening in every one of the other 66 counties in Pennsylvania. Make no mistake about that, including in these counties represented by members of the Senate Republican caucus. And yes, I know for a fact that they're starting to hear it from their constituents. And maybe that will start to have an impact. But the time has come. People are suffering. This is a duty that the state has, and there's no reason, given our fiscal situation right now in the Commonwealth, that this shouldn't happen. I'll just add one point about that historically. I've been in the legislature now for a total of about 15 years. When I was in the State House, we had two budget impasses. One back in 2009 when Governor Rendell was in office. That one lasted until October. And then another one, Governor Wolf's first budget in 2015. In both of those cases, the state was looking at a deficit. Revenues were way down because of the Great Recession, and some hard choices had to be made. That's not where we are today. As I think Representative Brennan noted, when somebody is actually taking a video of them using a flamethrower and lighting up the governor's budget, what are you to make of that? That's kind of Marjorie Taylor Greene stuff. Seriously. And it's not serving the people of Pennsylvania. I'd get it if we were looking at real shortfalls and we were looking at a decreasing revenue stream, but that's not where we are. And the people of Pennsylvania need these services. These kids behind us need the help. These schools all over the state do. So we're grateful for you having been here today to hear what we had to say. I'm very grateful for all the residents who've come out to express their support in getting this done. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Go ahead, Dane. Go ahead, Tom. Yep.
Is there a way that you could appropriate money on like a piecemeal basis for education? Because I know that was the breakout with transit. That was
Yeah.
I mean, is that a possibility to get this money?
I don't think that's something we should do. We have an obligation to pass a budget to fund all the lines in the state that the state has. I mean, you heard Diane talk about a lot of the social services that need to be funded. Where do you choose, right? And what's the reason for doing that? I mean, we shouldn't be here in the first place. So let's just get the budget done. Let's just get the budget done. We can easily get to a place, even if it has to be below $50 billion, if for some reason that 5 makes a difference, we could still get something done that addresses those healthcare costs that I talked about earlier, that addresses the adequacy requirement to fund education, that keeps our other lines intact so that we can provide these services that Diane just described. That's what we should be doing. And I don't want to get sidetracked on something like that, Tom, because if we do that, then the pressure is off. And now it's February and we still haven't passed the budget. Or it's March and we still haven't passed the budget. And guess what? The fiscal year is almost over. We need to get this budget passed.
Is there anything legislatively looking forward that can be done to kind of like buy into future budget cycles? Like I know I've heard people say, why are state lawmakers still getting paid if there's not a budget?
Well, candidly, I mean, one of the changes that happened, I believe it was back in the early 90s when there was a budget impasse, I guess it was during the Casey administration. That one resolved relatively quickly because back then, if it wasn't passed by June 30th, nobody in state government got paid. Nobody. And that immediately changed the dynamic. That was altered after that impasse. And I would argue that that hasn't helped. I haven't heard of a lot of discussion about doing something like that, but I think it would have to be broad-based like that to provide that stick to make sure that people come to the table. You would hope that without that, that members of the legislature would understand the urgency of getting it done anyway. But regrettably, this is an example of where that is not the case.
And I guess with the federal impasse and cuts at the federal level,
Right.
How is that? I imagine that's a concern in Harrisburg. A lot of that money is passed through.
Sure.
How does that factor?
Well, we have, look, under the, I'm not going to call it big and beautiful, under that horrible bill that was passed back on July 4th, we are going to start to see real hardship, and we're already starting to see it for the people of Pennsylvania. The one example of what's being fought right now by Senate Democrats and House Democrats in Congress is this issue of the subsidy for buying on the exchanges under Obamacare. People's health care costs are going to start to skyrocket because of those decisions that Republicans in Washington have made and that Donald Trump has made. This is only, all these things just kind of build on each other and provide an environment that makes it very difficult for working families to be able to survive. So that's what this fight is about. That's what that fight is about. Great. No other questions? Thank you. I'm sorry. Yeah, so right now, the last budget that was passed by the Senate, by the House Democrats and rejected by the Senate Republicans was about $50.24 billion. So that is, again, now, we're getting down to, almost $1.5 billion below what the governor proposed back in February. That's significant movement. Well, right now they passed a budget bill at 47.9, 47.9. So that's significant. There's a significant difference. But here's the other piece. Like I said before, there is about $2.2 billion in additional spending we have to do both in education and in healthcare. And if you're going to pass a budget that does that, and you're not willing to come up over last year's $47.6 billion spend, then guess what? You got to cut about $2.2 billion from last year's budget before you even can start talking about that. And I haven't heard one person on the Republican side, either in the House or the Senate, explain what they would do to do that, because that would be painful. That would hit a lot of these services that Diane described before. That would have a detrimental impact on a lot of our communities. And I tell you, probably a disproportionate impact in a lot of these rural areas that are represented by Republican senators. So that's a problem. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's money that we have in reserve that we can pay. Yes, that we can use. Well, it's no longer a flatline budget then, right? It's over a $49 billion budget, which, I'm not going to speak for my colleagues in the House, but I'd be open to that. I'm sure my colleagues in the state Senate on the Democratic side would be. At one point, Senator Pittman made it sound like he would be, but now suddenly, no dice. So again, we have to get real about this stuff. We're not, this is not a game. Real lives are impacted, and we need to get this done. So thank you all very much. Thank you.